But I wager it's an ordinary witcher's contract.
Mm-hmm. Some werebubs, 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 some werebubs.
Why?
Werebubs.
Everybody's thinking about me, but I feel alright. Everybody's out to get me, but I feel alright.
I like The Witcher 3, because when you complete a quest, it goes, hey! Like that. And then when you play Gwent, the in-game card game, it goes, oh! Like that. When you play The Witcher 3, it's just constantly hearing, hey! And oh! Because the game is excited for you to play it. That's why it happens. It's just constant audio positive reinforcement for the player to constantly hear, hey, and oh, because it shows from the game to you that it wants you to be there. I don't know what I mean by any of that. This is The Witcher 3 and it's on the Switch. That's why it doesn't look as good as The Witcher 3. You might be watching this and thinking, this isn't as good as The Witcher 3 in terms of visual quality. No, it's not, because it's on the Switch. That said, it is fairly impressive that it's on the Switch at all, and as far as compromises go, they're quite reasonable. There's a visual downgrade, you know, it's like playing it on computer with lowered settings, of course, but it runs. It runs. And it's not just that it runs, it's not just the bare minimum required to claim that it is on the Switch. It runs fairly decently. The Switch doesn't collapse, it doesn't explode, the game doesn't chug. For the most part, it runs at a consistent frame rate. It runs at a moderately consistent 30 frames per second. It doesn't always match that, but it doesn't reach a point of slowdown where it really impacts the experience much. If you head into a village or a town, it might slow for a second or two. Sometimes when you're traveling in the map or before you start a combat, it might dip a bit, but it's really not that bad. And some might even argue that it's no worse in terms of frame rate than the PS4 or Xbox One versions were. Though of course those versions look significantly better. But as far as current gen games ported to the Switch go, this is one of the better ones, not least of all because of the sheer size of The Witcher 3. The Witcher 3, of course, is an enormous game with a massive open world, a ridiculous amount of side quests with associated fully voiced dialogue, the kind of scope and ambition and detail that has seen CD Projekt Red accused of unreasonable crunch periods for its developers that I don't approve of. So with all of that allegedly crunch-inducing detail in The Witcher 3, it is somewhat impressive that the game runs at all, let alone runs as well as it does. When Wolfenstein: The New Colossus was ported over to the Switch, for example, I thought that was pissing ugly. I found that difficult to watch, which was helped in no small part by the fact that you are having to sit there still and watch people talk a lot, and when that happens it looks like everything's been smeared with Vaseline, without much action or motion on the player's part to obscure that problem, and I found it very uncomfortable from a visual standpoint. Now, there's a lot of standing and talking in The Witcher 3, but when I was playing that, I didn't find it quite so hideous a time from an aesthetic perspective. The game looks better in handheld mode, of course. The smaller screen obscures some of the visual downgrading, and just when you've got it in your hands, when you've actually got it in your lap, and you're playing it away from a TV, it's just all that more impressive. The novelty factor of playing The Witcher 3 on a handheld Nintendo system carries the game quite far. But as someone who has played a buggering shitload of The Witcher 3, playing it on the Switch does feel a lot more like a novelty than anything else. Plus, the Joy-Cons are not the best controllers to use for a game like The Witcher 3. They're not the most precise when it comes to analog sticks, and I found that maneuvering Geralt around either to pick things up, loot things off the ground, or just to get out from a crevice or over a fence, it was just that little bit more awkward when playing with the Joy-Cons as opposed to something like the Switch Pro controller. I captured footage mainly with an eye toward just showing off the visuals. As you can see, the weather effects are all in place. You have got sunny, you have got rainy, you have got wind push the trees a little bit. It's got all the weather effects, which is probably the thing that impressed me the most. It's just those details that are there that haven't been skimped on, that are surprising. That's something I could see, something like the trees being bent in the wind. That's something I could see them, scaling back on in order to get the game running better, but didn't seem to be needed. It's got all of those effects, all of those details. That's all good stuff. I don't know why I got off the horse to fight people on horses, but there you go. Other than that, it is The Witcher 3 on Switch, which is itself, an impressive thing. It's not something I think is worth picking up if you've already got The Witcher 3 on another system. As I say, if you've already got it or if you've already played it, it's more a novelty factor thing, but given the Switch's popularity, it stands to reason that there are quite a few people with a Switch who either haven't bought The Witcher 3 or don't have a system on which they can run The Witcher 3. And in that case, yeah, if you've not played it, if you don't have the means to get it elsewhere, yes, this is a technically inferior version of The Witcher 3. You could, for dramatic effect, say it is the worst version of The Witcher 3, but the worst version of The Witcher 3 is still a pretty damn good version of The Witcher 3. So, there you go. And that's more or less it as far as thoughts on the port go. Replaying it, to do this video, replaying it on the Switch, I do appreciate the middle ground this game strikes between the lavish over-detail of something like Red Dead Redemption. I was going to go through all of the words that begin with R. Red Dead Redemption. Because that's so lavish, and every little thing has to have an animation. Untying someone. You've got to watch laboriously as he flips over someone who's untied and goes down and unties their binds, and they get up. Whereas in The Witcher 3, if you talk to someone and they're tied up and you're like, I'm the Witcher, I'm going to untie you, it just fades to black, fades back up, and then they're untied. Same with looting things. You kill an enemy, kill a monster in The Witcher 3, press a button, select what you want, quite standard. In Red Dead Redemption, you have to sit and watch as he goes through pockets, as he skins animals, and it just gets very bored and boring. Then there's the other end, the other extreme, the recently released Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which I think many of you know my opinions on that piece of shit game already, which is just bare bones, no detail whatsoever, just a vast open world of repetitive crap that's so marked on the map as repetitive crap because it's everything adheres, that's the word, everything adheres to a formula, and everything is marked on the map, flagged, in very obvious, conspicuous places, and you're expected to just do the same thing over and over again. Now, in The Witcher 3, there are, quote-unquote bandit camps, but unlike Ghost Recon Breakpoint or another Ubisoft game where they are in specific places on the map and take a long time to do, and it's just the same old thing, these are small little encampments of like 5 deserters or bandits or whatever. You run in, you fight them, you loot the place, it's over in a matter of minutes. Because the game's got other stuff to do. It's got side quests with their own detailed stories, like the Bloody Baron side quest, which is the most famous Witcher 3 side quest, I think. Certainly one of the most critically acclaimed. And that's just a side quest. Whereas the side quest in Ghost Recon Breakpoint is find a blueprint for a gun and go get it from one of a dozen copy-pasted bases. So it strikes this balance between excessive detail and player convenience and quickness that a lot of open world games, especially this generation, have struggled with. They either end up so repetitive and shallow, or they go the Rockstar route. Not many go that route, where they just go over the top with detail to the point where it's extraneous, and both extremes feel like they waste the player's time in various regards. Whereas The Witcher 3 has a lot of detail, maybe still a bit too much detail, at least from a player work perspective, but there's still a lot of convenience in there. There's still a lot of things that are quick, and even the more repetitive things feel less repetitive because they are quick and they're naturally dotted around the map, and you'll just find them as you go and can, safely ignore them at your leisure. And you don't feel compelled to do everything because there's nothing else to do. There's plenty to do. So yeah, that was just a little thought on The Witcher 3. This nice balance it strikes between going too detailed and going too threadbare and repetitive. It's a nice game. I'm glad that CD Projekt Red said they're looking to crunch, although their boss was a bit churlish about it. Don't overwork your workers. No game's worth it. I'd take Cyberpunk a year later if it saved people on stress. I tried to subtly put my cup down then so it wouldn't pick up on the mic, but there was no way to do that. I'm going to stop talking now. Bye.
Weird.